Okay, give you a summary and conclusion of what we have done today. We continued with the range of how samadhi is attained. And I'm so happy that all of you did your homework, came out with patterns of how samadhi is attained. This is rather complicated. So I hope that you will go back and check with what you have come up with the slides that I've shown, and perhaps you can come up with something even better. Then, what is Samadhi? We talked about it, but we have not reached a conclusion. I will conclude afterwards. And what is sankara? We also talked about it and gave you some important points which will probably be repeated in the slides. And we also did some detective work to deduce from the suttas how to view and investigate sankara, because the Buddha did not really tell us how to do it explicitly in that root sutta, Tatiya Samadhi Sutta. Then we also covered the function of samatha and vipassana. As for the patterns of how samadhi is attained, in terms of the sequence of mental states involved, there are at least 7 discernible patterns of how samadhi is attained. And most of these patterns can be seen to conform to the 4-step process of stilling the mind in samatha practice, which is make the mind stand properly, make it sit properly, make it unify, bring it and place it properly. Okay? These are the literal translations. And there's no fixed rule that the object of focus of the samadhi thus attained has to be conceptual or panyati reality. In fact, samadhi can be attained by contemplating ultimate reality, such as the 5 aggregates, which we saw last week in the Samadhi Bhavana Sutta. There are 4 types of samadhi mentioned, remember? Jhana samadhi, perception of light samadhi, awareness of thoughts, feelings and perception samadhi, and contemplation of the 5 aggregates samadhi. And what is Sama Samadhi? I pointed out just now that in 4 suttas, Sama Samadhi is defined as the one-placedness of mind equipped with the 7 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. And again, in 4 suttas, it is defined as the 4 jhanas. So, to compromise, we can say that the one-placedness or focused state of mind must be at the jhanic level before it can qualify as Sama Samadhi. All right? And the 4 jhanas must be equipped with the 7 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path in order to qualify as Sama Samadhi. What does this mean? It means to say that when people are listening to a Dhamma discourse during the Buddha's time, and then they get awakened, as most lay people did at that time, the samadhi they gain must be at a jhanic level. Yeah, we saw through a few suttas, and we also analyzed and said that it is possible for the samadhi gained while one is listening to the Dhamma, teaching the Dhamma, reciting the Dhamma, reflecting on the Dhamma, or practicing the Dhamma. That sort of samadhi can be equivalent to the first jhana. Last week we already saw that. And then the 4 jhanas, if let's say somebody decides to practice the kasinas and then he gets jhana, but there's none of the 7 noble path factors involved, can this be right samadhi? Cannot, right? Cannot be sama samadhi. So even if you get a jhana using anapana, you get a jhana using kasina, you get jhana using anything, but it is not supported by the 7 path factors, this is not sama samadhi. So as we found out also, sama samadhi can occur when one is listening to a relevant Dhamma talk with a proper attitude, as stated in Pratama Samata Niyama Sutta, Anguttara 5.151. After finishing with samatha, we went on to vipassana, and we have to do some detective work to find out what is sankara, as it was not defined in our root sutta on samatha and vipassana. So as I pointed out, in this root sutta On page 54, AN 4.94, Tatiya Samadhi Sutta, the Buddha defined the object of vipassana contemplation as sankara, but did not elaborate on it. By surveying other suttas, however, we can infer that in the context of vipassana, sankara is not restricted to the ultimate realities of form, citta and cittasika, or rather rupa, citta and cittasika, but include anything such as ideas and judgments that has been constructed by causes and conditions and has the nature of arising and vanishing. And then non-sankara, such as nibbana and the laws of nature that are included in Dhamma, do not have the above two characteristics, but are nevertheless not self. There's no one who created all these laws, no one who created nibbana. They are all not self, doesn't belong to anybody, it's not a product of anybody. And then the Buddha also, in AN 4.94, he defined adipanya dhamma vipassana, or distinct seeing of things with higher wisdom or direct wisdom, as a result of viewing, investigating, and distinctly seeing sankhara, but he did not elaborate on how to do so. By surveying other suttas, however, we can infer that sankhara are to be viewed as anicca, dukkha, and anatta in the light of causality or conditionality. Now, even viewing Dhamma with wisdom as anatta can lead to purification or liberation, according to the Dhammapada verse 279. Not only sankharas, even dhammas. If you view dhammas as anatta, some dhammas, things which are not conditioned, if you view them as anatta, also can lead to purification or liberation, according to this Dhammapada verse. Now, my understanding of these three important terms, viewing, investigating, and distinct seeing, as the process of vipassana contemplation, is like that. Viewing here refers to theoretical right view. You have to learn some theory about how to view sankharas, right? So the theory is that all sankharas are supposed to be arising and passing away due to cause and conditioning. Yeah, they are to be viewed as impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not self. And then the second step is actually apply this theoretical right view into practice. How do we do that? How do we verify this in practice, instead of just having an intellectual understanding or appreciation? So in our guided meditation just now, I started off with open awareness, and then when your mind is more steady and more settled, I ask you to look back at the mind to ensure that the mind does not grasp at any object. And then later to look at how the mind reacts or responds to whatever is apprehended at the senses. Okay? This is looking back. When you look back at how the mind responds, then you have to interpret it from the point of view of anicca, dukkha, anatta, not me, not mine, not myself, due to cause and conditioning. Yeah, you have to try to see through direct experience in the immediate past what is the cause and condition for that particular thought, idea, judgment, assumption, or whatever that arises in you. That's how you investigate. That's how you try to verify through practical experience, not by reasoning, but by actual experiencing it. And when you do that again and again, this is of course mixed with some intellectual thinking, some rationalizing, but as you do that again and again, this becomes embedded in your subconscious. At first you use sati, willful memory, to recall what you learned and to remind yourself to put it into practice. When this willful memory is activated again and again and again, then it becomes sanya. Sanya is spontaneous memory. Then your mind will automatically perceive things in terms of anicca, dukkha, anatta, in terms of conditionality. Right? That's why the Buddha often tells the monks, develop the perception of impermanence, develop the perception of non-beauty, develop the perception of not self. Perception can be developed in a sense that if you do it with mindfulness repeatedly, then it becomes spontaneous memory. Just like right now, all of us have this sanya that things are permanent, things are sukha, things are atta. Right or not? Even though you all have read, you're Buddhist, you have learned that everything is anicca, dukkha, anatta, every time you watch your thoughts, you still think it is my thoughts. Right or not? My feelings, my perceptions, my understanding, my idea, my opinion. Right or not? It's still there. It's not so easy. Intellectual understanding is one thing. Looking at seeing that these thoughts arise not because you cause them to, but due to causes and conditioning. That is another thing. That is the actual experience. So when you try to verify that intentionally again and again and again, one fine day, the insight will arise. And that is a spontaneous insight, not the one that's intellectual. You know, it will just arise and it's like the eureka. Aha! It's actually like that, you know. At first it's all jumpstart, pushing with a bit of intellectual understanding. But later on, when it becomes embedded in your subconscious, then that is when the insight will arise. And that is when it will have a very, very significant impact on your worldview. Yeah, that's when you change significantly in your outlook on life, and it should be reflected in your conduct and behavior. So that is the best. That is actually the best yardstick to test and see whether you have made progress spiritually or not. Yeah, it's the end result. Have you become a better person? Are you more well-behaved? Are your precepts more impeccable? Are you more patient, tolerant, understanding? Actually, it comes very naturally. When you begin to see your own mind, it keeps on changing and changing, kilesas coming and going, and you begin to understand anatta, automatically you become very understanding. You know that everybody else is like that, right? Yeah? And you also don't blame yourself for all those kilesas because they don't belong to you. And you don't blame others for their misbehavior because they are also the same. They are also victims of these visiting defilements. And they just don't know it because they are not meditators. But you are a meditator, you know, you should know it. But don't blame yourself. Blame avijja, ignorance, who is also a visitor. Okay, so now we go on to the function of samatha and vipassana. So we saw that citta is naturally luminous in the sense that it is pure, but it is constantly defiled by visiting defilements. And so we practice samatha in order to develop the mind, because the mind that is developed will abandon lust or passion. For some people, wisdom is inherent in the citta, but cannot develop because it is defiled by ignorance, which is also a visitor. So we have to practice vipassana in order to develop wisdom. So when wisdom is developed, ignorance will be abandoned. Although vipassana can be developed prior to samatha, it must be coupled with samatha until at least the first jhana in order for awakening to occur. So that's why you can see in several suttas the Buddha always encouraged one who knows samatha, who doesn't know vipassana, go and learn vipassana. One who knows vipassana, don't know samatha, go and learn samatha. One who doesn't know both, go and learn both. Yeah. And then when you have learned both, you know, don't be complacent. Keep on practicing until you reach the goal. Okay? So that's all. Appamadena sampadeta.